Okay, so today we're going to take a look at a camcorder, specifically the Sony PXW-X70, a great little camcorder with a horrible name. Seriously, can't we change this name? Can we call it the Sony Ninja Cam? No? The Sony Swiss Army Cam? That's really what it is. It can do everything. The Sony MacGyver. No, we can't call it MacGyver's taken. All right, fine. We're stuck with the name, the Sony PXW-X70. Let's take a look at it now. Okay, so maybe you're a little apprehensive about using a camcorder. I mean, after all, we used to borrow Grandpa's camcorder to shoot home videos and make movies when we were younger, right? Actually, maybe that's because I'm really old. The kids these days probably made them on their cell phones, and that was fantastic. Anyways, if you're like me, you're normally going to use a DSLR camera or a mirrorless camera to make your videos. Personally, I've upgraded my camera to the Sony a6400. I love that camera. It's fantastic. But that doesn't mean a camcorder is not a good option for your video needs, specifically if you're using YouTube. If you're making videos just for YouTube, this is a great little camera. And if you're making family videos and those kinds of things, this is awesome as well. But it can also do a lot more than that. One of the great things about this camera is how light it is. Like, look at that thing. It's holding in my hand right now. Super light. Sure, not as light as a mirrorless, but it's also a little bit bigger, and it's going to give you a little bit more bang for your buck. This has a very powerful 1-inch sensor in it, which is great for such a tiny little camera. If you look at that, one of the big features on this is the built-in audio. It has 2 XLR inputs to it. That is awesome. If you can have built-in audio into your camera, you're taking away a lot of your headaches already, making your life so much easier, and I really love having that in a camera. Now, another thing that we really like is the built-in ND filters on this. I mean, if you have those other cameras, DSLR or mirrorless, what are you doing? You're attaching a variable ND or other NDs to them, screwing onto your lens, making sure you have the right neutral density levels, and if it's not, you gotta switch them up again. This thing here, switch it to wherever you need. If it's too bright, switch it. If it's getting darker, you don't need it as much. Having them built in is fantastic, and it is such a nice thing to have in a little camera like this. Now, it also has a great little flip out screen. Now, if you ask me, a lot of cameras are having flip out screens these days, but this one's fantastic. Look, it's pretty big. It rotates for you. It does a lot of other things that you really want to do. It's a pretty bright screen. Even in the bright sunlight, it works really well. It also has a viewfinder. If you need to use that, you just pop that out, and it's a color viewfinder. Everything's very crisp in there. It gives you exactly what you're looking for, especially on really sunny days, and you really got to get in there to make sure your focus is just bang on. Another thing, it has a very cool lens on it. It's a 2.8 lens. I believe it's 9mm to 110mm or something like that, which is pretty good if you ask me. Having a 2.8, that's pretty good. You can really get open, get some really nice shallow depth of field, especially with that 1-inch sensor on there. I think that is a real plus for this camera, and I think a lot of people are going to like that. It's a Zeiss lens, so that's pretty good. They built that right into it. You can't change out the lens, which is a little bit frustrating. We'll talk about that later on. But I think for the most part, the lens itself is pretty strong. They be able to have a lens like this on a tiny little camera like this, that's a very big thing to have, and it's really helpful. Now, the user-friendly menu is only user-friendly if you know what you're doing. I've used a lot of Sony menus in the past, and I'm used to them by now. Some people, when they first go to use a Sony menu, they think it's horrible. If you're coming over from Canon, it's completely different, and the way you set your menus and set your settings is completely different. Of course, they're two separate camera companies, so that's why they're different. Anyways, this is pretty much the same as many other menus that you find on Sony cameras. I use the Sony FS5. It has a very similar menu on this, and that's great because if you're going from one camera to the next, you don't want to have to learn a whole new menu system, which can be really frustrating. One of the other things on this thing is autofocus. It does have very good autofocus. I'm not going to say it's as good as the Sony a6400. That has fantastic autofocus, especially for photos. But the autofocus for video is amazing on that camera, but it's also very good on this camera as well. Of course, you also have manual focus if you need that. Most of the times I shoot in manual focus, but I got to tell you, sometimes it's really good to switch it into autofocus and just see what it can do. It responds pretty quickly. You have to be careful sometimes to make sure you have enough light so that it's responding properly and getting you a crisp image. But I think for the most part, it does a lot of the things you want an autofocus to do, is keep that in focus and give you the confidence to know that that's going to be in focus. Another thing on this camera that I really enjoy is that you have complete manual controls if you want, and you have complete auto controls. There's literally a button in the back. You turn it on and you're good to go. It'll do your white balance, it'll do your aperture, do your gain, your shutter. It'll do it all for you. And of course your focus. All you have to worry about is your composition and of course your audio, which is built in. So it helps you a lot there. But the auto mode on this is actually pretty darn good. I've been a camera guy for a long time, and I don't normally like to use auto mode, but I turned it on to give it a try, and it worked really, really well. I was really surprised how responsive it is. And of course, it doesn't give you exactly what you want because it's an auto, but the other option is switching over to manual mode, and it gives you options that you would use on any other DSLR or mirrorless camera, or even a cinematic camera. It gives you all the options to set everything yourself. So if you want to get a nice depth of field, if you want to get different kinds of shots, you can get it all through manual. And that is something that I really, really think you're going to like. One of the other things you might want to try with this camera is vlogging with this camera. Now I took this outdoors and we tried to vlog a little bit with this camera. I'm going to warn you, I've been stuck inside with everything that's going on these days. So we didn't have a lot of time to go outside. It's early spring here in Ottawa. So we went outside and we gave it a try, and I think it worked pretty well. Take a look. Okay, so you can definitely walk and vlog with this camera if that's what you choose to do. It's nice and light. I have it set up to a mini tripod. It's not wide enough. I'd like to have a little bit farther back, but this lens is as far as it goes, so you have to live with it. Now, having the audio on the shotgun mic attached to the XLR is a fantastic thing. The little screen to the side, make sure you look at the lens, not the screen. Anyways, if you choose to do it this way, it can work. So right now I have mostly in manual control. The only thing I'm using auto is auto iris because I want to test that out. And I think so far it's going pretty well. This camera can work very well as a vlogging camera, whether you're going to hold it and do it that style or just set it up on a tripod or on a rock, whatever works for you. Having that built-in audio on a shotgun is amazing, and that little screen where you can just check your composition to make sure everything looks good. Having that is amazing. Now you can do all this on a mirrorless and a DSLR, but you gotta add on to those cameras, which is a bit of a pain. Having everything built in to one tiny little camera like this is fantastic. Now, of course, the quality might not be the same as a DSLR or a mirrorless, but I think having that 1-inch sensor, it makes things pretty good. These cameras are getting a lot better, and who knows what the future of these mini camcorders will be. Let's go back inside and finish our video. So there you go. If you wanted to, you can vlog with this camera. It's actually a pretty decent setup for vlogging. So if you did want to vlog with it, don't be worried about it. You can do it. It's light enough, and you can get the shots that you really like because it's such a fantastic built-in camera that it does almost everything for you. Speaking of doing everything for you, let's talk about some of the pros with this camera. My biggest pro is the quality. Sure, you might be saying, but it's a camcorder. The quality is not going to be as good as the DSLR or a mirrorless camera. Wrong. This has a 1-inch sensor, so it's going to give you some fantastic quality. You can also upgrade this camera to make it a 4K camera. You can get it online. I believe in Canada it's around 450, maybe 500, and it'll give you the ability to shoot in 4K, which is great. One of the other great things about this camera is how easy it is to use. So I put the quality and how easy it is as the top pro, because what you want in a camera is something that's going to be easy to use. I mean, you can go out on a shoot, you flip the screen on this thing, it turns on automatically, you're ready to record in a couple seconds, which you can't say with a lot of cameras. Plus, you already have your audio set, your ND on, you're ready to go. A lot of cameras, you have to set up your audio, you have to set up your ND, and then hopefully everything's working and communicating with the camera, and then you're ready to go. This thing, you turn it on, you know everything is going to work. You get your settings to go so you're going to record XLR audio. I have it set up with a shotgun mic. It works really, really well. You can put wireless on it. You can put a lav on it. Whatever you need to do, it will get it done for you, and it's fantastic. A lot of cameras, you got to build onto it and build your rig, which some people love to do because they can add on to it. But some people don't want to have a camera. They can just go shoot and that's it. And this does that for sure. Another great thing about this camera is that it records on SD cards. Of course, I would suggest a good fast SD card for this, especially if you're going to get the 4K upgrade and want to make sure that you're recording to the proper formats and get as much bang out of your buck out of those SD cards. SD cards can be cheap. Of course, other kinds of cards are much more expensive, so having SD cards for this is a real plus if you ask me. Now, like I said, the menu is quite easy to use on this, which is very user-friendly. Everything's there for you. You can set so many different settings that it gets kind of confusing sometimes, and then you might have to go back and do a factory reset on it because you screwed something up. But seriously, the menu is actually pretty good. If you just take the time to get to know it, you'll really enjoy the benefits of having a really in-depth menu like this. And I think most people, once they first get it, they'll be a little bit intimidated. But once you get to know it a little bit better and really start to use the camera, I think you're really gonna like that. Another great thing about this camera is the zoom. It has a 12 times zoom on the lens itself, which is pretty good. I think for a lens like this, that's pretty good. But it also has a 24 times clear optical zoom, which also I think it's called the D extender, I believe. Anyways, you can take a look at some of the footage here. I have to let you know that I was shooting out in my backyard because, again, we're stuck inside, so we're not really allowed to go out too much. Luckily, I have a lot of wildlife going on in the backyard. The squirrels love our backyard. The neighbors feed them peanuts and you name it, they feed them a lot. So they come around here. So I figured, hey, I might as well put them to work for me and test out the extended zoom on this. And I think it works pretty well. You do lose some light and you lose some focus on this. So you got to be really careful. You got to make sure you shoot very carefully and make sure you get some crisp focus on this. I shot some of this with autofocus. It works pretty well. But if you go to manual focus, you can really, if you use your focus magnifier, you can really make sure you got the crisp eyes on that. Look at that. Look at that squirrel eat that nut. That's just a squirrel looking for a nut. That's all he is. Good for him. Good for that squirrel. All right, so now let's take a look at the cons of this camera. Sure, I've been telling you how great this little camera is, but you're gonna sacrifice some things to build such a tiny little camera and to keep it low price as this camera is. So there are a lot of cons. One of the biggest ones maybe is the lack of still photos. You can take a still while doing video and you can take a photo with it, but the quality is just not there as your other cameras, your mirrorless or DSLR. So that's kind of a problem. But if you're only using this for video, then what do you need to worry about? You don't. But a lot of people like myself like to have a camera that you can use for video and photos, and you never know, you might want to change up and you only have one camera. That would be great. So the fact that it doesn't do great photos, that's a con if you ask me, and a negative, and I think we can deal with that because we know we bought a cheaper camera and it's a camcorder, so we know what we were getting into, I suppose. The one lens thing is a little bit difficult for me. I'm the type of person who likes to change lenses depending on my shoot. I would really have loved this to have an interchangeable lens. It doesn't, and that's fine. Again, trying to make this thing really easy for people to use. They put a great lens on there, but you can't change it if you wanted to. If you wanted something like a wider lens or something to get just a different look, a little bit more bokeh, a little bit more depth of field, you'd want to change up that lens, and you can't do it on this. But again, we know what we're getting into, so we just deal with it. But it'd be nice if you could change your lens on this camera. Now, I talked about the menu. I really do like the menu, but I really don't like the menu buttons on this thing. The main menu button is right near the screen. So when you flip the screen out, it's hard to press the menu button. And then also there's a little dial to change items on the menu right there, but there's also a trigger and a joystick back at your thumb. I would prefer if you do everything with the joystick and the thumb display because it just seems to make more sense to me. It's hard to press the menu button and move that little dial to get exactly what you want. I wish they would just make it simple and put everything on the thumb joystick and deal with it that way. But of course, it's such a small camera. Real estate on this camera is very, very tight, so they got to put buttons where they can, and they got to make it accessible. I just think maybe they could have redesigned this to make it just a little bit more user-friendly when it comes to those menu buttons. Now, we can also talk about the battery. The battery is pretty good. You don't get a charger when you buy this camera in the original package. You do have the ability to plug it in and use it that way. And if you plug it in, it does charge the battery, but the battery's got to be attached. I suppose you can get a third party or the battery charger for this, and that's great. But it didn't come with the camera, and I think it should have. And the batteries themselves are not the regular, more brick style batteries. They're a little smaller batteries. They're not as popular, so they're a little bit more difficult to get, which is a little bit frustrating. But if you're going to make an investment into this camera, you're probably going to want at least 2, maybe 3 camera batteries to make sure that when you're on a shoot, you're not going to have that battery die. As far as the lifespan of the battery so far, it's been pretty good. I haven't used it that much, but I got to tell you, it hasn't died on me, and I was like, oh man, I can't believe it. So it does last fairly long, but I think you're going to want to have 1 or 2 more batteries. Now, I should tell you how I came upon this camera. This is a camera for work. I didn't buy this camera myself, but I am training our volunteers and co-op students to use this camera, so I thought it would be a great time to bring it home and get to use this camera. This is coming down during the big shutdown of everything, and we're stuck at home, or safe at home as I prefer to say. Anyways, I brought it home with me so I can learn the camera so that I can train our volunteers and our co-op students. So that's why I have this camera, and I have this time to take a look in depth at this camera and show the volunteers what it can do. When we come back and everything starts going up again and the production start going again, hopefully soon, I can have a great tool to show these guys on how to use these cameras. So at the end of the day, I'm not sure if I'll give up my Sony a6400 for this little camera, but I have to say I was very impressed with it. When we first got this into work, I was looking at this camera, I'm like, why did we waste our money on this camera? We should have just got a Sony Alpha series camera and just went with it. Of course, we have really good high quality cameras at our work, but this is something for the volunteers to use so they get a little bit more experience using a camera, and this is something that they can use going on a shoot, and they know they're going to come back with some pretty decent footage, and they can build from there as their knowledge of the cameras expand. So I wasn't sure why we got these cameras, and when I did take it home, I found it kind of funny, but I got to be honest with you, I love the fact that it does everything that you want. Having that built-in audio, the built-in ND, everything in a small little camera like that is awesome. You just take it and you go. You don't have to worry about, oh, I got to bring audio, I got to bring my cable for the audio, I got to bring my ND, I got to do all this other stuff. Everything's taken care of for you. And the fact that it was pretty decent quality, that really surprised me, because I thought you're going to give up quality if you're not using DSLR or mirrorless, and maybe you do give up a little bit of quality, but the quality is pretty darn good. And I think I was really impressed with this. And I would not hesitate about getting one of these cameras for myself. It would be a fantastic B camera. If you're out on any kind of shoot, just bring it with you. If you have a problem with your other camera, you know this camera is going to work. Pop the battery in, everything's ready to go. It will work and be great for you as a B camera. If you're just starting out, if you're doing YouTube and you want a camera you're not sure, this is a fantastic camera. I mean, what's the biggest thing new camera operators screw up? Anybody? Audio, am I right? They screw up audio all the time. I mean, I screw up audio all the time. It's the easiest thing to screw up, and probably the most important thing not to screw up is your audio. Having those XLRs on there, you plug it right in, you can check your levels. It's amazing, and I think that will really help new YouTubers if they want to try this camera. The fact you have the flip screen, you can watch yourself, play back your clips, make sure everything's going. Having that auto mode is going to be a blessing for people that are just getting into filmmaking and just getting into YouTube. You're going to love this camera, no problem. If you can get this camera on sale, it's a bit older right now, so you should be able to get it on sale. There's new models out there. If you get this camera on sale, you're not going to be disappointed. I think you're really going to love this camera. Okay, so hopefully I showed you that a camcorder can be a very effective tool to a filmmaker or anyone creating videos. Don't discount this camera because it's a camcorder and you want to use mirrorless or DSLR cameras. If you want to use those, fantastic. But there are other cameras out there that can be very effective tools to your filmmaking, and I think this one is right up there. I appreciate that you took the time to watch this video. Perhaps you're stuck at home, or again, like I said, safe at home like I am, with my family, doing the right thing, keeping your distance from everybody. We really got to try to entertain ourselves. This is the first video I've made since this whole thing came down. To be honest, I didn't really feel right about making videos. I wasn't really into it, and I thought, you know what, I really enjoy making videos, so I'm going to try to make one. And this was a fun little camera, and I really wanted to make a video on it. And because I wanted to learn the camera myself, and that's the best way for me to learn, is to make a video and see if I like it, and I did like it. So hopefully you're at home, you're safe, and everyone's safe, and we get through this quickly and hopefully soon, because it's taken its toll on a lot of people, and that's really unfortunate. So anyways, thanks for watching. I appreciate it, and subscribe if you like. If you don't, that's okay. I'll get over it. See ya. I'd also like to mention how sorry I am to you, the viewer, to see my hair like this. You see, I had to cut my own hair. We live in wild times, and I had to cut my own hair, and I had to cut my son's hair. He still hasn't talked to me since, but he's turning the corner. It's only been a week. I'm trying to bribe him with video games and food. Unfortunately, I did this to myself, so I apologize, and I'm just going to say that I really, really miss barbers out there, because, yeah, I get emotional because